What's going on? This is Mitchell Black with Bodies by Mitch. So facebook.com/Bodies by Mitch. Also I'm doing the Lifetime Fitness presentation that we did tonight for insulin resistance in teen weight loss. And I want to put this on there so I can answer any questions you guys might have, kind of go through a few things. My dogs are running in the background, so I hope it doesn't distract you too much. But I'm going to go through the nutrition presentation of insulin resistance. Again, I work for Lifetime Fitness. This is for the teen weight loss program or for anybody wanting to learn more about insulin. I'm going to try to make it shorter than some of the other segments, but hopefully it won't take more than a couple minutes. But all right, so first I want to talk about what insulin is, because if we're going to talk about insulin and try to change something and talk about insulin resistance, we have to understand what insulin is. So insulin is a hormone produced from your pancreas, all right? Your pancreas produces insulin anytime that you eat sugar or carbohydrates, all right? All carbohydrates break down to something called glucose. Glucose is the simplest form of all sugar, and it's essential for any living organism on the planet. So whether that's you or a plant or a cockroach or anything, it doesn't matter. Glucose gets used in every living organism, all right? Now, what happens is when you eat carbohydrates and they break down to glucose or sugar, the pancreas excretes insulin to manage that in order to manage your blood sugar. And you do need insulin. If you didn't have insulin in your body and you ate sugar, you'd immediately go into a diabetic coma because your insulin would manage the blood sugar. Now, what happens, though, is as insulin gets excreted from the pancreas, the more of it gets excreted, the more sugar you take in. So, yeah, you'd have more insulin getting produced or excreted via a donut than a salad. And I know that's an extreme example, but just to get the point across. Now, on your insulin, there's insulin receptors, and they kind of stick out like little hands, and they grab glucose, all right? So the insulin gets produced and it grabs glucose and manages the blood sugar. And that's what's supposed to happen. What happens, though, is if you take in a high carbohydrate diet, like the average American eats 2,900 calories a day, and it's 65% carbohydrates. When you take in a volume that high, the insulin receptors start to shut off. They start to close. So what happens is your brain goes, well, I ate carbohydrates. Let me send a signal to my pancreas to produce insulin, and it excretes insulin. It goes, well, wait a minute, I excreted insulin. The insulin receptors weren't open, though, and I didn't absorb glucose, so let me excrete more insulin. So it goes into overdrive. So you ate this much sugar, produced this much insulin, and uh-oh, here we go, you stored this much fat. Because insulin, after it manages blood sugar, has a couple simple roles. It does store a little bit inside the muscle tissue, but its main job is to store fat. And it stores a lot of fat around the midsection. Because as we talked about in the adrenal function video I posted before, that those fat cells in your belly have 4 times as much fat receptors to store fat than anywhere else. You don't get a whole lot of fat on the back of your hands or your forehead. You get it all in the midsection. You usually notice it midsection, subscapula, which is your shoulder blade, and your triceps. That's where you'll store all the weight. So the higher the insulin, the more fat you're going to store. Insulin stores fat, and we don't want to raise the insulin levels too much. So when we look at somebody who says it's just as easy as eat less, exercise more, another way we can disprove that, we can prove that the law of thermodynamics, which is eat less, exercise more, is wrong. We can prove that by saying it doesn't matter if you're eating 1,200 calories a day. If you're eating 1,200 calories a day of Weight Watchers snack cakes and 100-calorie snack packs and Gatorades and things that have tons of sugar, it won't matter a bit because that sugar elevates insulin levels. It will make you lipophilic, which means that your body loves to accumulate fat. And you can eat 1,200 calories a day, but it's the fact you're eating at all that you'll store fat. Now, insulin resistance is the most single-controlled health condition in the United States because it is mostly diet-induced. And 1 in 3, it's very little genetic is what I mean by that. 1 in 3 Americans don't process glucose or insulin very well. And you'll notice like metabolic syndrome, syndrome X, prediabetes, that's all the same thing, all right? So usually people are insulin resistant for a very long time and don't even know it. They don't know that their body's not metabolizing carbohydrates efficiently. Like I said, 1 in 3 Americans aren't processing carbohydrates very efficiently. So you're pretty much insulin resistant unless proven otherwise, is how you want to think about it. And you want to treat your body as though you're insulin resistant. Some symptoms you might look at are carb and sugar cravings pretty frequently. You need to eat every 2 or 3 hours. Anxious or irritable if you go too long in between meals. Headaches, usually on the front left part, like the frontal lobe right here, right by the hippocampus. Mood imbalances, not necessarily depression, but maybe angry and happy. Foggy brain, like you can't pull your thoughts together. Sleepy after eating, and that's anything at all. Sometimes if you have a gluten intolerance, you'll get sleepy after gluten products like wheat and grains and stuff. But I'm talking anytime you eat, you're sleepy. And increased fat around belly, scapula, or all over is usually where you'll see a heightened for insulin resistance. If you measure around the belly button, men with a circumference around the belly button of over 40 inches and women over 35 inches, higher risk. The biggest thing, I mean, we can look at triglycerides and cholesterol. The biggest thing is your fasting glucose. For every point that your fasting glucose is over 84, you are 6% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes in the next 9 years. That's proven. You're not considered type 2 diabetic until you get to fasting glucose, meaning the amount of blood in your, the amount of sugar in your blood when you haven't eaten for 12 hours, over 126. So 126 equals type 2 diabetes. At 124, you're good. Check box. Come back in 3 months. Let's reassess. And if you do get to 126, if you work really hard and you get to 126 and you're type 2 diabetic, then they can treat you for type 2 diabetes. Well, 90 to 100 is an appropriate range on a doctor's scale. We need to get you under that. We need to get you under 84. So fasting glucose under 84. Every point that you're over 84 makes you 6% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes in the next 9 years. As insulin gets raised, it will raise testosterone in women, estrogen in men. So you'll see women start accumulating fat where men store fat, and men start accumulating fat where women store fat. Men start getting a lot of fat around the breast tissue or around the hips. Women start getting a lot of fat right here in the belly, carrying a big beer belly, if you will. It also onsets what you see a lot of in puberty, like women start getting a lot of peach fuzz, like right under the lips or around the side, because testosterone's going up. Start growing hair. Men start losing the amount of hair they produce on their legs and arms and stuff. So with all that being said, I know I'm rushing through this because it's a lot of information, trying to keep it under 10 minutes in one video. If you have questions, please comment or go to facebook.com/bodiesbymitch. But some nutrition guidelines, you want to make sure you get your fiber over 25 grams per day. Average Americans at 12.5 grams of fiber in a day. You want to get 25 to 50 grams of fiber. Try to go 3 servings of vegetables to 1 serving of fruit. Make sure you get your fiber from fresh or frozen vegetables, all organic, and 3 servings of vegetables to 1 serving of fruit. 30% protein in every meal. Please, 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 30% protein in every meal. No refined high fructose corn syrup or refined carbohydrates, none of that. Cut all that out. That will raise your insulin levels. So if you're eating Fiber One bars, you're eating Cheerios, you're eating Nature's Own bread. I mean, 1 slice of Nature's Own bread is equivalent to 2 tablespoons of sugar. So if you're eating a sandwich, that's equivalent to 4 tablespoons of sugar, which will raise your fasting glucose 150 points. All right. We're trying to steer away from all that. Gluten-free in all your wheat products, no sugar, no grains, trying to eliminate that as much as possible. When you do cardio, stick to 20 to 30 minutes, all right? Do high-intensity intervals, manage your stress levels, and try to sleep from 10 to 6. Manage the stress levels so you don't produce so much insulin that you get hyperinsulinemia, which is where you have free-floating insulin in your bloodstream and you wind up accumulating a lot more fat. Hyperinsulinemia is commonly misdiagnosed for type 2 diabetes and hyperglycemia, but make sure that you lower your sugar content, lower your carbohydrate intake, elevate fat. For questions, please comment on this video. I know that was kind of fast. Or go to facebook.com/bodiesbymitch. I'm Mitchell Black. Thank you very much.